Did you know the top 10 mobile games in the US grossed more than $340 million in June? Do you want your game to earn more? App Figures is all about giving game makers the tools they need to get more downloads and revenue. You may already know them for analytics and app store optimization. Now, App Figures can help you keep track of competitors and the game market, from how many downloads they're getting and how much money they're making, to their audience demographics and even which tools they use to power their games. Their competitor intelligence gives you great context. Got a great idea for an app or a game? With App Figures, you can figure out how big the market is and how much money you could be making with it. Say a competitor adds a new feature or was mentioned in the news. With App Figures, you can see if that brought in more downloads, and that's just scratching the surface. Whether you're growing your game or building a new one, App Figures has what you need to reduce risk and get more downloads. Best of all, you don't need a large budget or data science degree to do this kind of thing anymore. App Figures has made it affordable and simple. On top of tools, App Figures also provides a lot of guides and tutorials to take you step by step through gaining more visibility with ASO and increasing your revenue by learning from your competitors. They just released a free guide on that, actually. Head to appfigures.com/on/GameDevUnchained to try App Figures for free. Again, that's App Figures, appfigures.com/ON/GameDevUnchained to try it for free. If you like it, use our special code GDU3030 to get 30% off for the next 3 months. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Game Dev Unchained, the #1 game development podcast about game development and the lifestyle thereof. I am your host, as always, Brandon Pham, and with me, a returning guest, a special favorite guest. That's why he's returning, Michael Shinde. Michael, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good, man. How you doing?
Good, dude. Just a little reintroduction. Don't have to spend too much time for those who are listening, but we want these to be isolated episodes. Can you give a good people out there of who you are, where you're from, where you're heading?
Sure. So my name is Michael Shinde. I'm a concept artist currently working at Riot. I work on the Valorant maps team, doing concept art for, all the maps, basically. Prior to that, I worked at Turtle Rock Studios, where I basically did the same thing. I worked on Back 4 Blood and a couple of other projects over there that fortunately didn't make it out the door. But we did work on Back 4 Blood. And then prior to that, I worked at One Pixel Brush, where I was that's like an outsourcing studio, where I did like a variety of different things. I worked on Last of Us 2 for a quick minute. I worked on Infinite Warfare and a bunch of other projects. And I also teach at Academy of Art University in their visual development department.
Perfect. So for those who haven't read the title, and it's been a while since we talked, but since then, I feel like basically in the span of 6 months, AI art have come into the scene and definitely dominated all our artistic circles and the general public. For those who didn't even care about art, are now talking to me about how cool it is to take selfies and see it in the style of pretty much any artist out there that they can think of. So this is, I think, a topic that I'll probably be spending the next year discussing with multitudes of experts. But I think it's, to kind of break into it, it was interesting to bring you on as a professional concept artist, as a teacher in concept art, and just as a fellow hobbyist, just in your own time producing art of your own. What are your thoughts about this?
Oh my, where to start with?
Well, let's start from the beginning, right? When did you hear it before everybody else did, like me? Were you knowingly seeing this coming onto the horizon 6 months ago?
Maybe not in the where it is now, how far it is advanced and how quickly. But I was experimenting with AI tools and just like apps and things like that prior to like this big mainstream explosion that you see now. There was like the Dream app or whatever, and then Disco Diffusion, like early days and all that stuff. But that was like, a lot of the things were very rudimentary. And also too, you can take like Photoshop, and it has AI stuff built into it, and that's been in there for like a good bit. Granted, it's like not very good. So I've known about AI for quite a bit, but again, like I don't think anybody predicted that it was going to go this, like, accelerate this fast and like piss this many people off, basically. And I think that's just mainly because of the way that it's been handled on its release, So yeah, like I think AI is like it's such a big topic. It's such like a deep topic. And I guess like I should preface everything that I say here with like, I'm definitely no expert in artificial intelligence in any way. Like I have to take, like, everything that I'm saying is coming from the perspective of like a professional artist that's using the tools, or like, has experimented with these things and like has like a general knowledge of like what's going on over there. But in no means can I like talk like super in depth about exactly like how AI works, because I think a lot of people don't really and cannot say with any definitive manner like how AI like digests information and spits out these images. So yeah.
Yeah, I think overall the primary thing with artists that we're instantly engaging conversations with is like the ethics of it, right? So I always kind of draw back to basically every discipline kind of went through this phase, in terms of how we're dealing with this kind of stuff. Like with environment art, there was, well, actually, it started with character art with 3D scans, like just being able to capture the actor's image, 360, high def, and basically transfer that into the software and be able to kind of basically one-to-one be matching it and fixing it. And there's a whole process to correct it. And that technology kind of led into environment with mega scans and being able to photograph like props. There's a whole cleanup process to it, but basically anything realistic, it becomes like the premier way of capturing data. If you're making a realistic game, right, there's no need to basically sculpt a rock anymore, right? Just go take an image. And then there's mocap for animators. Animators were kind of like fighting mocap for a while, but this is to capture motion, right? An actor's motion. And again, it falls more in line with realistic motion and not with stylistic like Pixar films or Disney animation films. And now I feel like it's kind of the next stage. In a way, I feel concept art has a more of a crisis than all the other disciplines, right?
Yeah.
To me, this is like direct violation of everything that a concept is, in a way.
Yeah, I think like when you bring up like mega scans and mocap and all that stuff, I think when you compare that stuff to AI, at the very least, like the ethical means of it is still like it's good, right? Because you still have to go out and like capture the data yourself. That's why like Quixel had like those teams of people that would go and like photograph all this stuff, or textures.com, right? So like humans are still out there like getting the information, and then you pay for it, right, to have access to this information that was paid for in a responsible way. The difference, I guess, like maybe a closer comparison would be the introduction of photo bashing into concept art, right? Where in the very beginning, and even not so much recently, but like mostly in the beginning, people were very worried about and outraged with like the ethics of using photos in your work, and saying, oh, you should be painting everything by hand, etc. And then like how like the whole thing of, okay, well, obviously like most people aren't photographing all their own reference. That's just like unreasonable. So they're obviously getting this reference from somewhere, and is it copyrighted? And if it is copyrighted, then how is it, when you put it into your work, like how is it does that put you in some sort of legal trouble or whatever? And how do you avoid that? And then there's like this whole thing of, oh, you have to paint over like a certain amount and stuff like that. So I think like the ethical side is like pretty close to like early days of photo bashing when that was still like kind of Wild West. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that artists in particular have latched onto like quite heavily, myself included, with the ethics of it, right? Because for people that don't really understand what's going on with the AI, right? AI has what's called a data set. And data sets are like a collection of information. It could be images, text, or whatever. And they're like huge. It's like huge amount of data, like 5 point something billion images or something like that. And that's what's used to train the AI to, output these images, right? And the problem with this is that, a lot of times it can contain sensitive material, copyrighted material, graphic material that are like medical images that shouldn't be in there, like a variety of different things that are very problematic, not only legally, but ethically as well. And, so for artists, right, it's like when you find out that things like Flickr and ArtStation, Behance, whatever, has been like those websites have been scraped like multiple times over for their images. And then the images are then being used to output art, that's very problematic, right? And there's like at least one, I don't know, famous, but like, a standout case of an artist named Greg Rutkowski, who his name has been used, I mean, countless times. I would say like thousands of times in prompts in like Midjourney and Stable Diffusion to create, I guess like good outputs, right? Like his work, like when you put his name in, it would like create like something that looks good. That's kind of the correlation. And the problem with it is that people would then post these online and it would flood the image search results with AI results, and his work would get suppressed basically, right? Because you're not going to be able to keep up with the output of multiple people generating work in your style, and you only have yourself, right? So yeah, like the ethics thing, I think is one of the bigger talking points when it comes to AI. I think like for me personally, it causes a like big strain because I'm not necessarily against AI itself, and I'm very much aware that it's going to be a part of the artistic workflow. Like whether you like it or not, you're gonna have to jump aboard the train at some point. So it's like I don't want to use it right now because of the way that it's, because of the data sets that are included with it, right? Like it's just it's problematic for me. But I have to keep tabs on it, right? I have to keep tabs on like what's happening in the advancements of it because, I am going to have to use it one day. I just wish they went about it more responsibly, because like the launch has been so quick and so rapid, and you can't like put back what's already been, taken out of the box, right? Like it's exploded onto the scene. And once you train the AI to do something, unless you erase it, it's not going to forget any information, right? So like, if you say you want to opt your images out of the data set, for example, right? Like as an artist, I say, I don't want my stuff to be in here, well, okay, that's fine. But if it's been in the data set, most likely it doesn't even matter at this point. It's like just a band-aid, not even like a fix, right? It's just like a make yourself feel better. It's like already too late.
There's so many things about it in the last 6 months that still like surprises me. Like it just felt like out of nowhere. Almost feels like a conspiracy, man. Out of nowhere, AI art came out. Now I'm seeing AI essays that people can write. Just the general feeling and like attribute it to like a style, and a whole essay can be written. And then just AI, everything is happening. And I've never seen anything unfold so quickly onto the general public as AI generation of anything. And even the microwave took a while, right? So there just seems to be such a influx of here it is, deal with it, discuss it if you want. But as far as I can tell, it's here to stay. Like I was looking at like news article, and of course artists like ourselves are having discussions about it, of how to deal with it. And I think it becomes, like you said, the cat's out of the bag at this point, where if my wife and kid or anybody that really never had an interest in art tools, right, suddenly are talking about it and are using it pretty damn well, and you're seeing influencers on Instagram and all these different avenues just gobbling it up, that it is at a point of no return, obviously. And it's like, love or hate it, it's changing things, right? The number one app right now on what is it, on Apple, is called what is it called? I was looking at it earlier. Lensa AI.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the number one spot on US App Store. Right. When was Photoshop ever number one of anything in the App Store? And it has 12 million global installs, and it's for 11 days, it's up from 600%. So like, I've never seen anything AI art tool gone so viral. I didn't know even that was a thing. I mean, once in a while you say Blender's cool, but you don't see everyone suddenly jumping on board and wanting to generate art. In a way,
it's a barrier to entry, right? It's so
the barrier
easy.
entry is so low right now. It is a make art button right now, right? And you can, play devil's advocate. In a way, it introduces a lot of artists, a lot of creativity. It solves a lot of issues too that I see. We've become an industry is about like, let me have the art now, right? Directors being hovering art directors. They want you to do micro changes or quick changes or just throwing random ideas at the board and wanting you to be able to generate. Now we have that, right? And I do think in a sick way, it's like a programmer's way of getting back at artists. That's
but what's funny about that, man, is like, programmers' way of getting back at artists. But I experimented with the text input, like the chat AI, like
Midjourney?
last night.
Yeah. Okay.
It's something called like Chat GPT or something like that. And it's basically like Stable Diffusion's, like it's the one that puts out, like, you can put out essays and stuff, right? You can say, oh, write me a paper about such and such subject, right? But I use it to create a Python code for Blender, and like I put it in Blender and it worked. It's like, it's crazy. Like it can do insane amounts of stuff that, right? And that's what's scary, right? Because if AI keeps going on this direction, like as accelerated as it is, it's going to replace so many different jobs. Like it's going to start to replace the human element of the workforce, right? I think, like the legal side of this stuff needs to try to catch up, and most likely it's going to not, but it needs to at least try, because if we're not careful, like it can be very dangerous, very dangerous.
Yeah, I think as far as I can tell, things are in motion. This is going to destroy a lot of jobs for sure. Creativity, I think, was something that humans prided ourselves as in. AI is too rigid to ever duplicate. But yeah, in a way that a disgruntled programmer went mad. Scientists, like, we basically told them, you need us more than we need you. All right, I thought the end of that discussion is when they created Minecraft, to be honest, right? When it's like the ugliest piece of art ever. Yeah. And then suddenly, and it became the biggest game in the world, right? I was like, all right, that's the end of that. And then we saw Roblox, right? I was like, all right, fine, you can have that. All the kids are playing it, but I don't get it. But take it, But then suddenly that wasn't enough, and we have this, and it's like you said, it will lead to an end. But the game industry in particular, and I think all entertainment industry, it seems like every artist is kind of against this in a way, right? At least publicly. I'm kind of in the middle. It
depends, like on certain.
Yeah,
things,
it really
right?
depends, because I see a lot of friends, like, they are using it not for just personal use, but professional too. They're like in there trying to like play with it, basically.
Yeah, I think like with AI, certain like definitely certain jobs in our and let's say the concept art or entertainment industry in general are going to be like their workflow will rapidly change. So for example, like if you're doing photoreal concept art, and specifically like pitch art, for like movies or something like that, your process might heavily involve like AI at the very beginning, and then painting over to fix like minor stuff or compositional things, right? Because I mean, it can be very difficult to beat the speed and efficiency that you're going to get with that. And if you look at some of the outputs, right, like if you're tuned into like these groups on Facebook or whatever, where these people are posting their stuff, I mean, like some of the things you see are very impressive. A lot of it is not, but then you see it every once in a while where somebody does something that, if you were to say, if you were to be doing pitch art for like a movie, right, like
Yeah.
like Star Wars or something like that, or whatever it be, it's very very close to final product, and you would just have to do like minor tweaks in Photoshop, right? And that's, I guess that's where like the difference too is going to be, where like the hobbyists versus the professionals, right? I feel like a lot of people get really scared with artists being replaced because of AI, but I don't see um I don't see AI like fully replacing us. There will still be a place for artists like with a skill set like ours, right, where we are able to take images and edit them afterwards, right? That's going to be like the major difference, because if everybody can use AI, right, like you take an example where everybody is like here, um, this is where AI is, and then artists like that have a skill set are like able to go further, right?
Yeah.
Like why would you hire a person that can only get you the output but not anything further than that, right? Because if we're all trained on AI, but I have extra skill sets, like I don't see the reason why I would be out of a job unless the direction is that AI altogether is what replaces everybody. But I think that regulation will eventually step in and make that not the case. I think that's like a very very dark future for entertainment as a whole if we decide to like replace humans altogether.
Yeah. When you say regulation, you're talking about just copyright issues and
Like, well, yeah, like that kind of stuff too. Yes, like copyright issues, but I honestly think they may have to eventually implement some sort of thing where like, AI is maybe a percentage of your workforce, but you can't have like a 90% AI workforce, right? Like, so for example, if you took like Riot Games, right? Um, your art department can't be just like one art director plus an AI sitting there, or like two art directors plus an AI, right? Like, maybe like a percentage of the workforce is AI or whatever. I don't know how that would work, but again, like I feel like there's like a ton of different things that need to be addressed with the legality of what's going on with AI.
yeah, I think at the very the law and the processes is always like 10 steps slower in tech. So it's going to be a while, I think, before any change is regulating this stuff. And I think the drive behind it would have to come from, for immediate change, for immediate moderation, is going to come from the team's ethical stance on it. Like indie teams, uh, small marketing firms, anyone that is small that doesn't have the resources to hire hundreds or thousands of people, they're going to use this. I mean, to the max, and they're gonna overutilize it and underreport it, right? Take a lot of credibility. I mean, I'm already seeing that on LinkedIn, to be honest. Like a lot of friends that are suddenly badass concept artists saying like, I made this over the weekend, no biggie. And then do like a essay on their thinking process behind it. I was like, all right, dude, come on.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. See, that's kind of crazy, man. I mean, like, it is wild, right, when you see stuff like that. But I think it is a positive that, like, one thing about AI, right, that I will say is, it does bring accessibility to creative work to people on like a broad scale. And that's a good thing, right? I think like people like, because I have seen things like posts or whatever on whether it be LinkedIn or Facebook or something like that, where people say, oh, with before AI and these tools, like I, um, felt like I couldn't like express my ideas or whatever. And now with AI, right? Like I'm able to visualize things that I want to visualize, and I can do it, however, and have control over it. And I can do like the essay part as well. Like I can do the whole process of, whatever I want to create. And that's a good thing, right? I think that, in general, like humans being able to express themselves is positive. Again, I just think that the companies that create the tool that allow these people to do this need to be more responsible with how they like release these products to the world. Because again, like, the data sets, they were not meant to be used in this way. Like it was specifically meant to be for like research and nonprofit. And then you have certain like companies that are, basically valued at millions and millions of dollars that are using these data sets. And that's problematic, right? But again, like there's positives to the introduction of AI on like a broad scale.
Yeah, and it does question like the processes, like what computer and machine learning does best. It replicates the thinking process of how we create art to a very technical and defined standpoint. So if there's anything off, like, we're seeing AI art that has authors or artist stamp on them still when it's being juxtaposed and kind of Picasso together, and you can still see the signature, like 10 signatures in an image. Yeah, watermarks on it, which is one way to kind of combat some of this. But, it's only a matter of time. We're talking in the matter of the last 6 months, and there seems to be like an infinite amount of AI generators that's popping up every day, improving the formula, that slowly is, the goal is to replicate a creative thinking of a human, right? The same way that we go to Google, which is in a way starting with AI and references, and then processing through our mindset and expressing it. Some nerd behind a computer eventually is going to define that in an algorithm and get closer and closer to what we define as a creative process, sort of, right? But right now it's going very technical. It's going to the extreme of literally copying something and mismashing it and not being very good at hiding it just yet. But we're talking about the infancy. We're if anything, if this was a kid learning how to do to doodle, right? So in a matter of years, how scary would it be? How I won't be able to even distinguish between the original artist and a copy of the artist's work in his style.
I think that's like another argument about AI that is like one of the biggest hot topics as well, is like how, does it replicate the human creativity the same way, and like it digests information and reference, right? Like that whole debate. And again, like I feel like with this particular one, I have to say, like, I am no expert on AI. So like, again, I can only kind of
speculate,
like speculate and mimic like arguments that I've seen online between the two, like between people that have been more well read on the subject than I have.
Yeah.
And also, but I will say this, and this is something that I think is roughly true, is that AI and the way they digest information is objective. It's binary, right? It's code to them, and there's no intent on how they digest the information. We feed it, and it spits out, right? There's no feeling behind it. There's no like, why did we digest this information? Did we like it for a specific? The machine like it for a specific reason? It's just outputting the information that you give it, versus humans are subjective, right? Like the things that we ingest, like we like it. I'm taking in this information because I like the way that this color looks and this shape reads against this value or whatever, right? And like
a personal experience.
Yeah, and also in combination, like with what you said, right? Like my personal experience, my background, how I grew up, right? Like, et cetera, like maybe how I'm feeling that day. So humans are very subjective with how we not only output, but input information into ourselves. And I feel like that's like a huge difference, right? Like the intent behind why we do something versus just and I think you see this with AI art, right? Like it's not intentional. It just does what you feed it, you know?
Yeah.
So that's a huge difference. And again, like that whole argument, like there's good there. If I say that and you could have like 1,000 different people on both sides that will say I'm wrong about this and that, and you're probably right, right? But again, like this is just what I understand about it, and at very least, I understand humans to an extent.
Yeah.
And again, like another thing too, we're terrible at memorization.
Mhm.
AI is not that way at all, right? Like AI will, once you feed it something, it has it now, and but with humans, I mean, shit, we can't even memorize like phone numbers for longer than 10 seconds, when we first get them introduced to us. Like, so yeah, the difference between human creativity and output versus AI is I feel like it seems like an obvious answer that the two are different. But for some reason there's like this feeling that it isn't. And I feel like that's kind of concerning, that people think that it's already like does things the same way that a human would, which is just like not true.
Yeah.
Like it can't
I
possibly be that a machine does something the same way a human does, right? When we're so flawed and different and from individual to individual.
Yeah. It's the oldest argument of, uh, every sci-fi movie that you ever um, look at has always been about perfection versus imperfection of humans, AI versus humans, right? But also the question of can AI evoke emotion, right? That's the missing factor to what makes AI a perfect replication of humankind, right? And in a lot of those good sci-fi movies, eventually the line gets so blurred where these memories are kind of, like are kind of imported into their brains. In the same way, like this is to the points that you're putting, like just to play devil's advocate, I feel it's like just another programmer's challenge to input randomization flaws, but also I mean, in a way, the internet does have uh the ability to learn our personalities. You go on Instagram, you go on Facebook. I mean, they're pretty much telling you what we want to buy next without even thinking about it. They hear jacuzzi in one off conversation, and suddenly I'm seeing all these hot tubs, right? And I think we're already at a point where, you know, who Michael Shinde, who's Brandon, is already figured out in the Google Facebook database in a very good way. So, like, if I was a programmer trying to perfect this, the next maybe down the Trello board is to kind of like, how can I make art in the eye of Michael Shinde? I mean, they're kind of doing that in a perfected way, but now it's like, how do I make art in the flaws of Michael Shinde, given new personality that you taken in
showing all my
past vacation.
perspective errors.
Yeah, perspective errors, not just technically, but just, what is your experience in the last 6 months that might have changed your understanding of things, right? And they can relate not just you, but compare it to basically billions of people around the world that went through a similar experience, and still be able to output something breathtaking. Like I'm seeing AI art and its flaws of being so perfect, basically, as in a very technical artist taking a stab at a subject, right? But you know, it's presenting, like any tool, avenues in a click of a button, varieties that I didn't think about, right? Just by playing by a few seconds. And like you said, just like any user that is good at being very uh absolute, being very defined, being very intentional, right? In their word input. I mean, the more descriptive you are, the more understanding of the AI generation that you're getting in terms of result. The best people are the ones that are like basically starting to get to the lens of the camera and the
Yeah.
focal, like all like very
It's
technical, crazy detail, right?
yeah, you have to like
Uh,
learn the language, right, of the AI, right?
yeah.
It's you're trying to learn, you're learning to communicate with a new entity, and that
Yes.
takes time. Yeah.
That takes time. And like anybody that takes time doing something, that the people who put more time into are naturally going to get better. But so this is the scary thing, is that you're seeing people who are seeing the potential or accepting, that it's here, but also you're also having a viral moment with the general consumer who are just generating selfies and having fun with it. And you're basically uh giving resources for the next iPhone. I mean, the reason why iPhones are coming out every year is that so many people use it, so many people are buying into it, and then the device gets stronger and better, and nobody squints an eye when they're spending basic $1,000 each year on a phone. But whenever a PlayStation 5 comes out, $600 suddenly becomes too much, right? So it's the same mentality I'm seeing with AI art, that it's grabbing everybody. Even Adobe, I was reading this article that they basically can't beat them, so join them mentality. They announce saying that they're uh, making available of their stock images, right, as part of AI art in their own way. Um, and I can slowly see, like, the ethical thing here is like the big image companies like ArtStation. I mean,
Yeah.
they
I
already are giving up on all
They
those
already, yeah,
images.
ArtStation already gave up on that. I think okay. So what you said that, because I'm not aware of this, right? But you said that Adobe is allowing their stock images to be used in the data set.
Yeah, let me pull it up and we can read it together.
Okay. Because I
Just to
think,
check facts.
yeah, sure. I think if that is the case, like I don't have a problem with that. I think that that's actually a good thing, because I mean, again, because like presumably everybody that contributed to that stock photo database was either compensated, or like, Adobe owns the rights to them in some sort of way, right? So
Right,
then,
right, right.
so I think that that's the way to go, right? Like that is a way that I would be okay with, if you had trained a data set on Adobe stock and put out an AI model with that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then I would play around with that. I think that that's a good way to start moving towards. Um, Again, but with like the ArtStation stuff, right, that when you
Yes.
combine that, where a bunch of artists are raising their hand and saying, "Hey, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be there." That's problematic.
So isn't their main thing right now an ArtStation? I got to read more into this, and I can pull the article up so that we can be exact. Is that when you sign up for ArtStation, is that bullshit where there's an agreement of everything you upload is ours, and therefore you can't really go back like that? That's the whole argument right now, right? And to kind of push
But
back on this
I'm not
opting
fully
in.
aware. I'm not fully
Uh,
aware of that,
Let
but
me pull it up. I read it somewhere, so let me make sure.
yeah, there's like a huge thing on ArtStation right now where people are getting really pissed off.
Oh yeah, of
And
course.
also like the silence of ArtStation on this subject, right?
Oh yeah, it's a crisis.
Yeah. Because you see, like, I mean, I saw the other day, right, like in the marketplace, this profile, and I'm not going to name the name, but like it was selling, it is selling quote unquote reference packs of AI art for
Yeah, I
like
saw that.
$2 or whatever,
It's a
and
deal.
obviously those, yeah, it was a deal. And obviously those images are, they're using other artists' work to
Of course,
generate
yeah.
those concepts, right? And then he's trying to make money off of it. Very
It's
problematic.
well, if I can relate this to 3D, which I think is a very close approximation. In 3D, we have the same technique as kind of what you guys do in photo bashing. It's called kit bashing, right? We take 3D assets, we kind of clop it together. And I've been seeing that too. Like people take assets from bought stuff and just put it into an asset pack and sell it as if they created from their own. And there's no regulation. Like if anything, no one cares about it. Where they should, because you usually pick up these things and I'm sure these guys would find that their asset got torn apart and sold for pieces. And it's a huge violation of copyright issues. But here's the thing, man. Like, this is what I hate about it. In games, and we're talking about the App Store, like the biggest marketplace in the digital realm, right? You make it number one in the App Store, you're made for life, right? And how many games have we seen ripped off in the top 10? Like, I see it over and over. Like, I was just talking about this with Fall Guys, right? Stumble Dudes or something.
Dudes.
What was it? Stumble. I was making fun of it. It's basically a huge ripoff of Fall Guys, right? But Fall Guys is only for PC, for Nintendo. But they never made it a mobile. And these guys took that same game. It looks exactly the same. The course is exactly the same. They changed a few formula, and they're the number one game in the App Store.
Yeah,
and no one's coming at them. Stumble Guys. Yeah, it's called Stumble Guys. And that's the marketplace. So I have no hope, right? If full games are being ripped off, well-known game, and we're not talking about an indie title, it was like the number one game of 2021 being ripped off in the mobile market, right? For artists, like, no one fucking cares unless it's like Renaissance art. Or
but you know what, Renaissance art is all in the public domain, so like that's actually okay to use, right? Like, that's the crazy part, But another thing too that's very concerning is like Stable Diffusion. When they're making a model that will do the same thing.
What's Stable Diffusion? Can you just quickly?
Stable Diffusion is the company that is behind the AI. Actually, well, it's not Stable Diffusion. I think it's Open AI, which is the owner of Stable Diffusion. And Stable Diffusion is the actual AI itself, right? So OpenAI is creating a music version of the AI, right? So like, but with one major difference is that they are keeping copyrighted music out of the data set, which is something that they refuse to acknowledge or do with Stable Diffusion, which is the image generator, right? So and the main difference between the two things is that the music industry is heavily regulated, and they will sue the hell out of you if you infringe on artists.
They got
rights.
Muscle.
They have muscle, right? Versus we do not, and that's the main difference. So you're totally right.
I mean, here's a huge opportunity where ArtStation, which is owned by Epic, right, can make a stand and make it known and be protective. But here's the problem, man. Like, Epic stole PUBG. I mean, like, they're in the business of borrowing stuff, right? And the reason why they're silent is, first of all, no one knows how to react to this. I mean, I think as artists, we formed a opinion very quickly because we're kind of more used and more sensitive to this type of thing of art stealing, right? And what's disappointing is ArtStation is owned by Epic, that they've been kind of radio silent. And the only conversation I've seen is that people digged into the end user agreement, the EULA, and basically have given their rights over to ArtStation for public and commercial use or whatever. Basically, they can do whatever they want with whatever we upload, which is, the oldest.
I wonder if that has to do with because how Facebook, people get worried about Facebook having a similar thing with the images there, but it has to do with their ability to share images on posts and stuff. I wonder if that has some sort of technical contingency attached to it, where it's they have to put that in there in order to put it up on the banners and
to give credibility.
I don't know. I have to dig into that too, because
I think that whoever. I think as artists is stop drawing for right now.
Maybe don't post online. Just send it.
Well, just looking I'm surprised. The argument is very simple. By now, I think if you're a concept artist of high caliber, and that guy that you were kind of referencing, what's his name? Which is
Greg Rutkowski.
Yeah, like the number one guy that people seem to be replicating his art or using him as a reference in the style of, he should be in there with his lawyer looking at the end user agreement and like, where the fuck is my
Yeah.
art being replicated, and fucking sue ArtStation's ass. It's like because it's cutting his resource to live, right? Like it's basically plagiarism to the max. And I'm surprised that hasn't happened just yet. Like any other industry, like you said, in the music industry, it would be day one on the front news. Like someone already would have done something, you know. Billy
Yeah.
Joel, Miley Cyrus have sued ArtStation for copying their music, right? And that's scary. The music thing is something I didn't even think about, but is such a natural, because music itself, especially pop songs, are so formulaic. A computer can totally generate a similar thing, you know?
Yeah.
But like, yeah, like you said, like art's ass is kind of left unprotected right now. We don't really have a lot of muscle. I mean, whole games are being copied, and people are just
Yeah.
shrugging it off as like, oh,
That's
that's
going to be
bad
the
luck.
crazy thing, right? Like
Yeah.
when AI is going to be able to just like digest an entire code for a game or something like that and just like output something,
Spit it out.
spit it
Yeah.
out like an abomination that's
Oh yeah, I'm
similar, but
sure
yeah.
they can do it now. I mean, starting the way that humans did with the NES, just the top down, easy sprites, they can replicate and create rules. And slowly it's going to evolve. I mean, that's the path we're taking now. I mean, now it just seems like there's an indefinite resource of art out there for AI to kind of generate. I mean, I heard the next thing I heard was obviously 3D art, 3D generated art.
Yeah. Nvidia is working on something that I saw the other day where they're able to like create 3D assets and do iterations on those assets and combine different like I'll have to send it to you offline, but like it's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, they're actively working towards 3D creation as well on the AI side.
Of course. It's just being attacked on all things right now, like not just art, music, just everything
Yep.
creative,
And
writing.
the thing, right, and the thing is it's us right now because we're so publicly available, right? Like if you go
Yeah.
to Google, you can find any artist's images that you want or whatever.
Yeah.
And so like, art is going to be one of the first things to, I guess, like have a downfall
Yeah.
or a crazy panic. But then, who knows what it's going to be next? It's going to be the programmers, engineers, whatever, what have you, right? Like the limits of AI, if it continues on this like acceleration, is it's unknown.
We're going to lose for sure, because right
That's why
now,
you have to like accept that we have to incorporate it.
yeah.
And that's my hope, right? Like my hope, I guess my ultimate hope is that, the entertainment industry as a whole, values human creativity and products, right? And that AI can be used in tandem with humans to create products, right? But ultimately, like humans are still the ones driving the force. And like I've seen things like Hayao Miyazaki and Guillermo del Toro putting out statements about like their feelings on AI and how like they're wholly against it, right? So like hopefully more creators that have large audiences and large pull in the industry are like side with that, right? Where it's they value the human experience and they see that AI is maybe a good tool for helping work process, but it's not going to be something that we want to like move towards as a full replacement for like human interaction.
Yeah. I mean, like here's the problem, right? The main problem is there's not a united front. Not all artists are against it right now, right? I would say the majority of artists aren't against it. and we're kind of like in the niche, right? I'm in the middle in terms of like, because of that reason, we lost. Like there isn't anybody really voicing. Yeah, we have these prominent figures, but that doesn't seem to be doing anything because everybody seems to be on board doing this to cut the venom from the snake. Right, you have to go to the source. The source of the AI art is sourcing unsolicited, unsanctioned art from the original artist. That's the problem, right? And I think everyone agrees to that. That's bullshit. That people are the machine is being fed original art that artists themselves don't have a say. There's no ownership to it, right? Which is funny because a year ago, all we were talking about is ownership of digital art with NFT.
I know, right? It just
it's such a, dude. I feel like we've been walking into alternate universes every fucking year since COVID, man. Last year, all we were talking about the protection and uniqueness of digital art and why it's important and why it's valuable. And now we're literally taking gazillions of arts and feeding it into machines and spitting it on the other end. And everyone's cool
into a machine where nobody owns the output.
Yes, I think what will stop this bullshit is taking a prominent artist, and hopefully it's this Greg dude, and perhaps I can talk to him and basically rally behind him to pressure Google. I think their ArtStation seems to be like basically ArtStation, man, but Google as well, a major image sourcing site that is commercializing, right, their art. But YouTube has the same. Here's the thing: there are things in place to fight this, because on YouTube you can't just take people's art and put it as part of your like splash screen and stuff. You get flagged for music. Well, music is definitely a huge thing, but you get flagged for any art that isn't sanctioned, or people can report it really quickly, right? And usually they're pretty good at taking that down. So it'll take a prominent artist to do the same with a major website like ArtStation or Google to basically scare these companies. Here's the weird thing about the AR is there's like these faceless like ghost companies. You know what I mean? There's no I haven't seen an interview from the creator of Midjourney talking about like the brilliance of AI art, right? Somehow I'm in like this obscure Discord channel, right? With these it feels like the dark web, man. I'm typing all these random questionable. Sometimes I see questionable verbiage, right? That's being typed. I was like, what the fuck are you creating over here? It's like underground telephiliac shit, right? And it's just like everyone in the room not talking to them. They're just trying to generate art for whatever project they're using. It's kind of fiendish right now. But I haven't yet seen a representative from any of these AI art talking about, they're all hidden. It's super mysterious, right? Like even Adobe came out and said hey, we're going to embrace it, right? But who are these original Midjourney dudes? Shouldn't they be talking?
I don't know much about Midjourney at all.
Bro, it's fucking weird. The six, 7 months has been so weird. These kind of ghost companies coming out of nowhere. Suddenly, with any innovation, you're able to kind of see these stepping stones of where they got to where they are. I feel overnight this thing just dropped.
Imagine
on the internet.
Imagine if instead of the Ford Model T, the first car, if instead it was just the Tesla, the Model S.
Day one car. Tesla. It works. Check this out. AI is amazing, isn't it?
They had no stop signs, no lanes. Model T, Model S is everywhere.
It's freaking weird, and no one's questioning it, man. That's the weirdest thing. It's every program, it's Photoshop. Photoshop used to be called 1, right? 2.2. right? It wasn't until recently that they just adopted the AI because there were so many iterations in the past 20, 30 years. How the fuck did AI art get so advanced? Like, you can blame it on the technology. This is what AI is. They can compute at like an irrational speed, right? And be able to, but how the hell are they being able to pull all these resources
It's
and
money and data sets, bro.
yeah, and it's crazy that there isn't anyone stepping in. It's like, where are you getting this? Like, even if Google was got downloaded all their images ever generated, like, why isn't Google so pissed off at like, yo, where'd you get all this image? Like, Google itself took 20, 30 years, and like Facebook, to generate and have those resources of images to use. As far as I know, Midjourney is not owned by Facebook or Google. Like, how did they come up with all these images? And how are they getting away with it? And these major companies aren't stepping in. And my thinking, and this conspiracy theory, is
Oh, here
that
we go.
somehow they're benefiting from it for whatever reason. It's going towards a goal that is aligned with theirs, and that's why they're not fighting it, right? Because if
Yeah.
Google was actually concerned about how did they take all these images from our database without us, basically it feels like a security breach, right? It'd be one thing if Google came out with Google AI art, come in and generate art, right? It's like, well, obviously they have images. It even makes sense where ArtStation came out, with ArtStation AI generator, right? But it's like these obscure companies where I have no idea where they came from, suddenly have all the images in the world at
I mean, yeah, I'm sure that
fingerprint.
like larger companies they will have a benefit to them, right? For AIs to succeed and grow. I mean, for certain, right, that that AI is mostly going to be, I guess, harmful to a human workforce, right? Except for those that are in higher positions. So I guess, yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's like a crazy conspiracy to assume that companies will benefit from it. Right.
Well, like you mentioned before, the baseline of a concept artist, they're gone. If you're a junior concept artist, I think you're done.
Yeah,
If it comes to
depending on what you do, right? Like I like, for example, right now it's AI is they're not good at drawing and
sketching, like line
sketching.
drawings.
Yeah, like, so for example, if you needed like an artist to like draw over a block mesh, for example, AI, I don't see AI doing that right now, or like an artist or whoever using a prompt to like try and be better at an artist at sketching over a blockout. So stuff like that will still be useful because that's like pure design. It's not necessarily about like creating a beautiful image. It's solving a problem. And right now I just don't see it being able to do that. Now that might change, right? Obviously I can't say for a definitive fact that I'm not going to eat my words a little bit later, but as of right now, it can't do that. But what it can do is replace the people who make, really good marketing art or like movie posters, for example, or whatever, right? That kind of stuff will be easily replaced. And in terms of like getting like a mostly finished product, and then just like having to like apply fixes over the top. Another thing too, like an example is, I'm very curious to see how storyboards. Oh yeah, hands. Hands it can't do. Hands are very complex objects, right? It just can't compute like what's going on there. Because it doesn't understand anatomy. It understands like the shapes and color and value, but it doesn't understand what's happening there. But like storyboard artists, for example, right? Like that's such an interesting profession in the face of AI because, could you even like do a prompt that would get you exactly what you're looking for from a storyboard, right? Versus like a traditional storyboard artist who are notoriously quick and have like really good shorthand and also like very expressive work, right? Like I really wonder like how the industry will approach that, because I think my opinion is that storyboard artists could still be employed, because they are very fast, right? And they also know exactly what you're you're going to get, right, with each frame, versus if you do an input, you have to like, I guess, write the input for each one, or you could do a series. I don't know. It just seems like AI wouldn't be able to replicate the workflow as efficiently.
Yeah, I mean, like this is where I think it's really relative to the other fields of discipline that like mocap and mega scans and 3D scans. Like it still falls in line with the design, or like you said, a very specific problem to solve. And that to me, I feel like is more of like a senior role anyways, like a senior role to be able to kind of creatively think through an issue. Whereas junior roles are more about like copy this, do that, being instructed, which
Yep.
AI does really well. If you
Yeah, I
can
think anything
give
like
directions.
technical, right? Like technical
Yeah.
skills. Like, I mean, say like I have a feeling saying goodbye to having to do UVs and stuff like that is going to
Yeah.
be quickly approaching.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah. Like I mean, in a lot of cases already is, but this seems to be basically a challenge to concept artists coming out of school of baseline. You got to be badass. You either have to elevate your game, or you're going to be out of a job for at least a good 5 years before you can show some design skills to talk to the AI and give directions and creative input on something.
Yeah, and that's been something I've been like kind of struggling with too, about how to approach this with my students, because with it developing so quickly and also changing, but also the legality of things being kind of unclear.
Yeah.
Right, like how do you tell your students that they will most likely have to adopt this workflow that they've never had to use before, or is like totally new to everybody, right?
It's a disruption.
Right. It's a total disruption. Yeah, a disruption of like the entire workflow that I have been teaching, which is like the traditional way of working. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be something that I'm going to have to start teaching very soon, or like at least like bringing up in the semester, right, at some point. But
Are you kind of seeing how other professors or concept artists that are teaching right now, how are they addressing this? Besides, Del Toro being against it, like how are they being flexible with this new technology that's coming out?
well, I think like I've talked to maybe like one or two other teachers about it, and they've just said that they are restricting their students from using it right now because like we have to remember that this is a learning environment, right? And so we're trying to like better our skill sets that will, let's say like we have to adopt AI into the workflow, like you still are going to need the skill sets that we teach you here, that which are traditional skill sets, that will help you to better the AI image output or whatever, if that's what we have to do, however the workflow is. I think restricting the use of AI in homework assignments is kind of a necessary step, right? Similar to like photo bashing, like you don't teach photo bashing to your students until they're like competent at values and color and things like that, and understanding like how you would incorporate a photo into a painting and have it not look terrible and and out of place. So it's just another tool set, right? Like another step, right? Like you teach them how to do thumbnails and then values and color and final. And then after they know how to do it from hand, then we can introduce like photos, then 3D, and now I imagine it's going to be AI, right? Like now that you understand how to build an image yourself, we can also teach you how to do the shortcut version, which you'll probably have to apply these other skill sets now on top of.
Well, the interesting about Lenza, suddenly last week, right? Like I said, every week there seems to be a new problem that AI is solving, right? Coming back at a criticism of it. I felt like 2-3 weeks ago, even a month ago, that, there were criticism about like, yeah, it's great, you can type random things, right? But the main problem is you can't feed it anything like an original image, and then it is able to kind of spit out varieties. And then here comes Lenza right? An original image. I haven't used the app, but I imagine you take a selfie and then it just fucks around with it, right? And then outputs in the style of, or how exactly does it work?
I haven't used the app itself, but I do know that there's what's called like image to image outputs, which is like you put in an image and like you give your prompt and any other like ramifications that you wanted to, or like specifications that you wanted to include, right? So like
Yeah.
I want it in the style of Ghibli and Waterhouse, whatever, right? Like crazy, whatever craziness you're looking for, and then it takes that image and it will apply all those things over it as like a general, and then you can like adjust the strength of the guideline, right? So like if I have like a picture of my face, I can like push a slider or like input a number that will like say I want it to look exact, like closer to this, or like you have more freedom to, move away from like the likeness or whatever. Like, there's parameters for all that kind of stuff. I don't know exactly how it works with the Lensa app, but that's roughly how it works within stable diffusion.
Yeah. So it's amazing that within the short time frame that it's allowing customization to that level, and I think it's going to keep exploring that. The next, there's so many avenues that we can take this. I know we have limited time, but there's one thing I definitely want to talk about, and I want to hear your thoughts about, which is, again, man, this is conspiracy theory, but it's definitely like the turn of event the last 2 years where remote working has pushed everyone to be in their home, and now AI art. And now I for sure think there's a lot of influx of quote unquote artists, right? Coming into the industry where they definitely don't need to be around people, where they don't have to show too much of a work in progress, and they can get away, if they know what they're doing, with generated art as their own and get paid, as we're seeing, not at just a hobbyist level, but at a salary level, taking jobs from traditional artists, and basically conning their way through a career. So this is the next topic. The next crisis, I think. One of the biggest crises that's already happened, and I'm sure people already got jobs, at the very least, freelance, right? For doing this. What are your thoughts about that? Like, I know we're still playing catch up. Like you said, you don't know what the impact is yet. So you're already starting to think about how to incorporate this into your teaching as a tool that is sanctioned. But
Yeah.
we're knowing that people are not going to leverage any drawing skills and just going to use this 90% finished art, pass it off as their own, and basically get paid, a full salary or a full project's worth.
I find it hard to imagine like a full salary position being replaced like by an image, because like if that's the case, right? Like let's say that is something that would happen. I would just say that like as an employer, like rather than replace your artist with somebody that is new, just tell your artist to like start incorporating AI, right? Because then you have like somebody that you already know, plus will.
But do you think, I guess before we go into deeper, like, do you think there's anything wrong about a guy who just have AI generated art applying for a job? Not saying that it's AI generated, because I know that's happening, and being able to kind of
yes,
finish the job.
I think that's problematic, especially because of how loose the laws are right now, right? Like that can not only land the person that's providing the AI art in trouble, it could also land the company he's selling the product to in trouble, like in the future, right? Because again, we don't know where we don't know where the laws are going to lean towards. Yeah. And if you're selling a product which could later put that company in liability, right? Like that's infringement. That's very concerning. Yeah. And so that I do think if you don't disclose it, that's not good. I do think that I've done like a few book covers, for example, that I could definitely see if AI was out, and I would have probably used it in the workflow. Like, because again, like it's good at making pretty pictures, and that's when what is a book cover except a promotional that's trying to grab the attention of a viewer from a bookshelf, right? And then I would paint over it or do whatever. But that those type of jobs, like while the best book covers are very skilled and like have amazing design work on them, there's a lot of small time authors and stuff like that that are looking to get a good looking cover but don't have the biggest budget. And why wouldn't you try this avenue where you could get like an AI prompter to like get you an output that is, you know, like maybe 90 or something percent that what you're looking for. And you know, maybe that's good enough, right? Like, and it costs you like not a lot of money. So instead of hiring a traditional artist, that's going to take longer and cost you more. So that's a downside for sure. But again, I think the takeaway from this is if you're working right now, like you should be like keeping up with the news of AI, keeping tabs on it, and like potentially like you can like experiment with like solutions as well, because I do think that it's going to be a mandatory part of our process at some point, whether you like it or not. And it's better to be on like the side of, you know, better safe than sorry than being left in the dust. Yeah. Because again, like, you know, especially with commercial art, like digital artists and things like that, we're always pushing the boundaries of, you know, software and tech and all that stuff. And while AI is an extreme step in that direction, like a very extreme step, it is still a tool, a radical tool, but you know, with proper regulation, a tool set at our disposal. And I think that we should consider very, very much consider that we're going to have to incorporate it. Otherwise, yeah, it's just not going to, it could look very bad for those that don't. And I say that with a heavy heart too, because like, you know, I like what I do and I like the way that I get to do it right now. And I think that AI is, you know, takes the joy and the process out of that kind of work, right? And that's sad. But yeah, if that's the way that it's going to go in terms of like making money from your art, at least, then we kind of have to accept that. Yeah. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't push for ethical guidelines to be in place on the corporations that produce these AIs.
Yeah, I think the first order of business is like, you know, where's the sources coming from, and those sourcing needs to take liability of providing it. And ArtStation or Google like needs permission from the original author. I mean, that alone. I mean, if you just look at the tech and just work backwards from that, of how it's a machine that's being fed these things and cut off the number of resources that it's feeding into it, then the tool is going to suck, right? At a certain point, it's not going to have millions of resources, or at the very least, it's licensing, you know, library resources, like how Adobe is doing it correctly, right? I don't like the fact that ArtStation is being super silent, because I feel like most of these art are being generated from their source, right? Or sources like them. And they are not doing anything about it, which is basically underrepresenting their number one client, right? And man, it really does suck that we have no voice. I mean, it just reminds me again, you know, why I like talking about this stuff, because, you know, 5 years ago, it was a union thing. It was overworking and crunch time. And then that got popular, right? And then now we seem to always be facing a crisis that reminds us, it's like, yeah, dude, you know, we don't really have a voice in any of this shit ever. We're always behind the curve. And I want to thank you, Michael, for coming on. It was a great introduction to AI art. I think it's something I probably have to revisit numerous times in the next 2 to 5 years. No, not to say that you weren't, you know, your knowledge and your experience alone and your story was phenomenal. Like you're giving me perspective about things, because I'm just sitting back like, typing all these words in there without any repercussions, right? But I didn't know every word I'm typing, I'm killing a concept artist. So
like
but
actually stabbing me in the chest.
yeah, I was like, oops, here's another stab wound. So this is the time where I actually shut up, Michael, to tell the good people how to find you, to continue the conversations with you on social media, even where to follow you and all that.
Yeah, well, let's see. I'm pretty dark on social medias these days. Actually, I'm trying to like move away from it. But
All because they keep stealing your art.
Yeah, those damn companies stealing my art. I'm on Facebook. You can just search me, Michael Shinde. If you want to hear more about AI stuff and ramblings, then that's definitely where to go because that's where I'm posting everything.
Cool.
And then ArtStation as well. Unfortunately, with all the things that we talked about with ArtStation, that's still where my majority of my work is.
Are there any thoughts of you moving away from it? Does it give you caution now?
I've lightly considered it, but man, I don't know. I would hope that they just come to a reasonable solution before I would have to like move because that's such a pain,
Yeah, it is.
The other solution would just be like going back to using my own site, which is a bummer.
Or printing out and
printing it out and sending it via mail. Yeah, that's about it though.
All right, man. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. It's always a joy talking to you. See you guys, everybody. See you guys next week.